Hey, welcome to the TV channel, and today we'll be talking about the Black Royal Knight deck. Moving on to the Digitama itself, we're actually playing one copy of Capurimon and four of the new ones. Now the Capurimon is just to give you +1 KTP if you're a blocker, and we are actually playing the Mega Draw, so that's why we are playing this. And for this one, it's actually just the better Black Digitama, I would say, because when your Digimon does die, you're actually able to reveal the top card of your deck and able to actually take it back to hand if it's a black Digimon. Moving on to the rookies, we're actually playing a total of 13. And first up will be the 4 Chikurimon. Now this is a newly introduced card in BTO 6 with a strong emphasis on a security Digimon effect. Now this one just de-evolve if your opponent does hit into it, so it can actually end some turns for your opponent, especially if they're going for OTKs or sometimes even a Jesmon. When a Jesmon does swing into this security, it becomes a level 5 and will be able to stop their extra security checks, which is pretty nice if you ask me. And in general, Black don't really have much rookies to play, I would say, even though they have a lot, but not a lot of quality ones, I would say. So this one is definitely a 4th in my opinion. Now Toyagumon. Now Toyagumon is pretty nice just because it does have the reboot skill, and this deck does focus a lot on playing the blocker, and having the reboot means you're actually able to swing with a level 6 and then rebooting them for blocker potential, making your opponent actually pretty desperate to hit over, but they can't because this is black. Now next up we are playing Chumon. Now Chumon is actually basically there to stop people from memory gaining, and this meta I would say have a lot of people gaining memory through the memory boost or even the Gomamons, or rather just in general, memory gain is very straightforward now and very common, so having this kind of Digimons to stop them from gaining an advantage is pretty nice. Now this is actually just a flex, I would say it's a tech card for some people. Now this basically gives your black Digimon with 13 KDP or more piercing, and if it's an inherent ability, it does just give them security attack +1. And hitting 13k for this deck is actually pretty easy as we go through more into the deck. Into the champions, we are total playing 11 copies here. If you guys can realize, there are actually 8 copies of 1 cost evolution because this deck doesn't really want to stay on the 1 cost, but actually moving to level 5 and level 6 eventually. But firstly, we'll be talking about Tankmon. Now this is just a 1 cost vanilla, and 1 cost vanilla is actually very strong, I would say, especially against those Greymon and Gabumon decks whereby they'll actually be swinging at security pretty early. And sometimes this Digimon does survive, so this Digimon will be the cleanup crew, I would say. Next up will be Dark Tyrannomon, mainly for the 1 cost, and it's just pretty self-explanatory because it's a blocker, which is nice and does pair well with Craniumon, and it's 1 cost. Now this deck does really want to go to your level 6 as soon as possible for the game to be in your advantage. Next up, we're actually playing Shapemon. Now this is a security Digimon. If you guys have been noticing the trend, Black has been receiving this kind of security Digimons from BTO 5, now even in BTO 6 in the form of Alphamon, and the new Chikurimon. So security Digimons are something that opponent can't really play around it, and this card especially is a blocker, and this blocker can come out of nowhere and can stop games, which will actually discourage your opponent from going too OTK or rather too, I would say, aggressive with their plays and might get punished with a sudden blocker. Next, for the level 5, we're actually playing just a total of 8 copies with a 4-4 split. Mega Dramon, which is just basically give your level 6 or above a blocker ability, and blocker ability is basically a godsend because you're playing Craniumon, and Craniumon will basically make your blocker basically invulnerable to your opponent's destruction spells or even destruction Digimons, but sadly not being able to play towards or rather against a minus DP because it is a game mechanic, and if you do reach 0 DP, your Digimon does automatically die. The next level 5 we are going to talk about is actually called the Rebellionmon, and it's actually a very interesting tech, I would say. Now, it's a purple Digimon on the card itself, but it does have an ability whereby it's treated as a black Digimon, so there's that. But the main thing is actually to play towards the when Digivolution effect, which is basically trash 1 card from hand to have this Digimon gain blocker and retaliation, which is vengeance. And why is this strong? Because this card specifically deals very well against Jesmon, and Jesmon is a problem in this current meta. So that's the reason why we are playing this, and having this Digimon gaining the blocker and vengeance means you can actually go towards your Gankumon in the same turn, and your Gankumon will actually have the vengeance and the blocker in the same turn, which will deter your opponent from making any further plays, which is basically being very annoying. finally we'll be talking about the level 6, which is the MVP of the deck, given that it's a Royal Knight, Black Royal Knight Digimon deck, and we're actually playing a total of 8 copies here. Starting off the Craniumon. Now Craniumon must be a card that everyone is very used to it, or rather know about it. It's actually a very obnoxious card in itself, but it doesn't have a lot of pressure in its own way. So that's why this card is actually forgotten, but it's actually one of the most strongest blocker in the game, given that it does have the ability to actually nullify destruction through effects. So Gaia Force can't deal with it, and you can't have Skull Greymon to deal with it, but it does die to cards like Millenniumon and Shine Greymon and even Slash Angelmon. So that's why this card is actually forgotten in a sense, but it's bringing back to current meta now due to the emphasis on Royal Knight. Now, Alphamon. Now, Alphamon, when it first released, I must say I wasn't really impressed with it, but after playing with it quite a bit, I would say this card is at best a security Digimon. Now, why would I say that? Because the first effect, given that you're actually able to, at the end of the battle in the security, you're actually able to add this card to your hand, and if a Digimon with Royal Knight or X antibody in its type is in play, up to 12 of your opponent Digimon can attack players for the turn. So basically, this is actually a holy ore. If you guys do play Duel Master before, this basically stops your opponent from actually progressing the lethal in the game, and actually able to add this card to hand, making it fairly consistent, I would say, evolving to a level 6. But the second ability, or rather the third ability, I would say, after attacking you're actually able to gain 2 memory, and people might argue that this is a 1-cost evolution, but it's actually really not, because if it's a 1-cost evolution, you're actually able to do more in that 1 turn, but because this is a 3-cost evolution and you have to survive after the swing, that's not very nice. On the second ability, whereby you're actually able to pay up to 5 memory, and if you do, this Digimon does get plus 1k DP for the turn for each memory paid. So meaning this card can actually reach 16k DP. And I wouldn't say this card is actually, you won't be actually playing this card, or rather playing the effect for this card, and you'll just be hoping when you swing for 11k DP, you're actually hoping to survive and gaining 2 memory after that. Because you do want to gain that 2 memory, and if you were to pay any memory for the power gain, it's not exactly worth it. Imagine you do pay the memory and then hit to a Gaia Force or something like that, man, that's just disappointing. But the next card I'll talk about is Gankumon. Now this card is a very strong Royal Knight, and I'm very happy that it's in black, because it does have a very strong Digivolution effect, which is whereby you can actually delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. Now this is very awkward, but it does kind of deter your opponent from actually playing a solo high level Digimon. But in this meta, I would say sadly Gankumon is not going to shine because of how much people are playing the Rookie Rush variants. I would say the Gabumon, the Agumon, and even Jesmon, who just simply spawn system mons like is free. And this card doesn't, or rather gets played around quite easily. But for other decks such as Blue, or rather Red, or rather Shoutmon in general, those single focus decks, this card actually does very well against them, because your opponent will be scared that you do have this in your hand as an answer, and this upon evolution can actually kill their board quite easily. Now the second effect is actually very decent, I would say. Very awkward though. Basically you just gain security attack +1 if your opponent has an unsuspected Digimon. I don't know why they can't just put a security attack +1 for this card, but they must make a condition for it, because maybe it's black. I don't know. Black usually gets the, I would say, the bad end of it. But this card is definitely nice, and this is why the Royal Knight Digimon has formed. Wrapping the whole deck list up, we're actually playing 3 Alter S, and why I prefer Alter S over the Zod is because Alter S is just underrated, I would say. Because this deck does have a very huge focus on blocker and stalling the game, Alter S is just the block clear that you need, and you don't really want to mill your deck to call more level 5, given that the level 5 that you call isn't exactly very strong. They are just bodies on the field. But Alter S does deal with the opponent bodies, and de-evolving is actually very underestimated nowadays. And let's not forget about the unblockable attack that this Alter S can do. Which is very nice, especially you can bounce all the level 6 back to hand and reuse it once again. Now for the Tamer, we're actually playing a total of 5, 3 to split, 3 tie. Now this tie Tamer isn't exactly the best Tamer, comparing it to TKs and let's just say the tie, or rather the tie in red. This is just basically give your Black Digimon +1k DP during your opponent's turn, so which is awkward, I would say, but it's mainly for the blockers, so your blockers do get beefier with each tie coming out on the field. But this new dual tamer introduced in BTO 6 does give the black the flair that it needs because it does have finally access to more than 3 memory in a turn now. And the second effect whereby you're actually able to draw one if your black Digimon do die during your opponent's turn is pretty nice, but I wouldn't say it's mainly played for that, but it's just a nice bonus. Now to wrap it off, we're actually playing the 2 Iron Fist Onslaught, and I would say this is just nice, I would say, because it's a guided force in general for black. And actually you're actually able to delete all of your opponent Digimon with the highest play cost, so if they have somehow 2 Omnimons on the field and they do hit into this security, bye bye to Omnimons. Now this wraps up the deck list for this deck, and if you guys do have any cards or rather have any recommendations or rather have any idea you guys want to discuss with me, do drop them in the comments and I'll be very willing to help you guys to answer them. Thank you guys for watching till the end, and do consider subscribing, dropping a like and a comment if you guys do enjoy the content.